Hi everyone, I'd just like to share this article which has been sent to me from Truthdig, which I do recommend as a journal, you know, that people subscribe to it and read it. I mean, alright, yeah, they are somewhat constrained in what they report, but nonetheless what they do report is of high quality and very informative, and generally, in my experience, sticks to facts. Okay, so this is what we're going to focus on now, are facts, because there's a big thing at the moment, isn't there, about this truth movement. And the thing about the truth is that many things are true, but are they lawful? Okay, is the truth lawful? Does it fit well into a context of, say, universal law of abundance and compassion that upholds people's human rights? On which side does the truth fall? Does it fall within the law, within the context of human, animal and plant and women's and child's rights and earth rights? Does the law, does the truth serve those concepts, or is the truth actually outside of those concepts? And, you know, the thing is that in assessing truth, we do so lawfully, and true law incorporates our full humanity, which includes compassion. Okay? Now, this article really does expose a very, very serious point. And it, you know, it does centre on racism against people of colour. And as it says here, shortly after midnight on August 18, 2017, just days after the neo-Nazi march on Charlottesville, workers arrived on the grounds of the Maryland State House to remove a statue of Roger B. Taylor, the man who authored the lead opinion in the case of Dred versus Sanford. And this is a statue in honouring Dred Scott. So Roger B. Taylor, as Chief Justice of the US Supreme Court in 1857, so he authored the lead opinion in this case as Chief Justice of the US Supreme Court in 1857, generally regarded as the most odious ruling in High Court's history. The Dred Scott decision held that African Americans, wherever they resided, could never be US citizens. The decision also held that the Missouri Compromise of 1820, which had outlawed slavery west of Missouri and north of latitude 36 degrees, was unconstitutional. And I mean, what you're talking about here is madness, okay? You're talking about a guy who upheld as a lawful ruling complete madness. The kind of madness that looks at human beings and differentiates between them, either favourably or unfavourably, according to the colour of their skin. Okay? We know for an absolute fact today that the only difference that a person's colour of skin makes is that very dark-skinned people with very strong hair fare better in very hot sunshine, very hot climates, sunny climates, than do people of very pale skin and very fine hair. Pale skinned people tend to burn in very hot climates. We also know that in climates where there's not much sunshine, people of very dark colour skin are very likely, more likely to suffer from vitamin D deficiency. Okay? So that is the difference of skin colour. That is as much as it tells about a human being. And even we cannot say that in 1857 We cannot say that, oh well, you know, the people of those times, they just didn't understand. Because they did. In Britain they did. In Britain, by that time, the anti-slavist movement had already abolished slavery in Britain on the grounds that it was inhumane and against these people's human rights. So it isn't as if this understanding that people of colour are all equal, no matter what colour we are, we're all equal as human beings. And we all have equal rights under universal law. Okay? Now, I think what this situation, this present political climate that seems to have taken a grip of America and actually is springing up all over the world, and even in Britain, is that there seems to be something going on here. Because everybody's watching the news, they're watching the mainstream regular news, they're looking at the alternative media and all the various platforms on every side that there is, and they're coming to a decision. Now, some people are genuinely duped, okay, probably because they're not very bright and they don't do much research, so they just believe that yes, you know, when the US had slaves, that was the utopia time of US history, because that's the way that it should be, because they're just not very good at accepting facts and information, okay? But that's a minority. And then there's groups of people within the factions that are supporting the so-called far right, who are themselves actually criminals and who will profit directly from the criminal decisions of the criminals that they have helped to put into power. But then you've also got a larger percent of people who, regardless of truth and facts and law, simply side with those that they feel are the strongest people, in the belief that if they publicly make it known that they support this extreme right, that somehow they will be protected from the crimes that these people commit. Okay? Now, the point is that the people who are siding with the far right or the extreme left, you are actually supporting Luciferian law of might equals right to do as thy will, because that is what is going on. That is what is going on. Might equals right to do as thy will. And if you're bigger and stronger than, you've got better weapons than African people, then that means that yes, you can enslave those people. If you're a man, you're bigger and stronger than a woman, then yes, that means that you can rape that woman, or even a child, if you want. If you've got enough money and power, you can do that and never face charges for it. You can pay the child an out-of-court settlement if necessary. So that's the point where you're dealing with lawlessness, and that's the point where a society is in danger, is at risk, and that's the point where, if that's a very powerful nation, then the whole world is at risk. So we need to remember that according to universal law, right equals might to do as thy will. Are you right? If you are right in line with the law, then you have a right to act as you will, okay? Because your will is trusted, your will is safe, your will is not going to harm other human beings or burden them with insane, unevidenced, and actually lying lying judgments. And it is a very, very serious thing. And a lot of, I've explained in a previous video, which I'll leave you the link to it under this video, and I do advise you to watch that video, because I do explain in detail how it is that we came to this left and right politics, and the idea that capitalism and socialism are two opposing consciousnesses within our humanity, when actually, no. Because humans, life itself, is naturally both capitalist and socialist. That's the fact of it, that the two need to work together. And it was precisely by dividing that people are then even more easily controlled, because then they're going to be falling into one side or the other, and one side attached onto that are going to be these extreme judgments against humanity. And then on the left side you've got extreme judgments again against humanity, a bit about people that, you know, set up their own little business and make a bit of a profit. But it's a known fact that a lot of these private businesses, before the advent of corporate capitalism, a lot of these small businesses that had provided employment, you know, they were very altruistic. People looked after their workforce because they relied on them. It's only when you get into the realms of corporate style enterprises that you find large numbers of people are basically just being used, exploited into wage slavery, into what amounts as wage slavery. And that's the truth of what the Afro-Americans were liberated into. They were liberated into wage slavery and a society in which racism, to this very day, is a fundamental feature. That judgment still continues. And we're talking about a psychological legacy here, okay? Because that psychology of degradation and dehumanisation that was dumped onto these people, and in spite of all that, the amazing creativity and innovative powers that these people have delivered to American culture, in spite of all that oppression, okay? It is incredible what these people have suffered, and that suffering has been passed on to every single generation, as it has as well with the Native Americans, who were equally judged inferior. So you're talking about a psychological legacy of oppression and degradation and poverty that gets passed on to every single generation in exactly the same way that the wealth and power and the psychological privileges that come with it is also passed on to every generation. And, you know, go and have a look at American prisons and you see there immediately that the people of colour who are in prison do predominate in those jails, and that black people are very many more times likely to be falsely convicted, wrongly convicted for crimes that they did not commit. That, you know, that is a fact. Now, as far as I'm aware, when a nation elects a leader, one of the most important things, you know, the fundamental foundation of electing a leader needs to be that this person is of sound and sane judgment, okay? But this President Trump is not of sound, sane judgment. And in fact, we have evidence after evidence to prove that he isn't, and nowhere more so than here. Trump's racism stretches back decades. to his formative years in the 1970s as a young New York City real estate developer when the Justice Department accused him and his father of housing discrimination. The president's racist past also includes, but is by no means limited to, the full-page ads he took out in New York City newspapers in 1989 to urge the death penalty, okay, for 5 black and Latino teenagers who had been accused of brutally raping a white woman in Central Park. Although they were convicted, the 5 defendants were vindicated in 2002 after another man confessed to the rape and DNA testing corroborated his guilt. Okay, and you know, this is the link. So this is what America has for a president. A man who actually took out full-page ads to demand the murder of 5 innocent men, because that's what that's what the death penalty amounts to, isn't it? Murder, when you're killing innocent people. If he'd have had his way, if his judgment had allowed to rule, those 5 men would have been murdered. Oh, and anybody else confessing, and the fact that the DNA proved this person guilty, well, that probably would have been all covered up, wouldn't it? Nobody would have been none the wiser. This is a very serious matter. And the people of America, you know, need to remember that these people of history who judged African people as inferior, apparently they were all Christians. They all went to church on a Sunday, praying to Jesus. Jesus who said, love thine enemy. Well, these people weren't our enemy. What had Africa done to anybody in the West? What did they do to deserve being condemned to servitude, to slavery? What did they do to be judged as inferior? That judgment was wrong. And if you're going to support a wrong judgment, America, if you are going to support a leader who is not of sound and sane judgment, then expect every horror possible that is going to come to you. And believe you me, it won't matter which of you have spoken out publicly on side of the right, so-called. Because that is one of the worst aspects of the Luciferian psychology, which is basically a criminal psychology. The worst aspects of that criminal psychology is that it will even harm directly the very people that have supported it. Because that is just how criminal it is. And crime knows no bounds in a lawless world. It is the kind of world where child abuse is a multi-billion-dollar global industry. So, America needs to ask itself some serious questions. Watch the video link that I'll leave below. It does explain very clearly that, you know, how our naturally socialist and capitalist aspirations as part of our natural humanity have been exaggerated and divided, and even on the side of socialism, you know, on that side, oh, we've got to make sure there's no Jesus in there, you know, God's completely cut out of it. Oh, but it's alright for all the capitalists to believe in God and talk about Jesus, the capitalists who are living in exact opposite of what Jesus promoted. The people, the criminal consciousness, which is of both left and right, okay? The criminal consciousness supports Luciferian law. It supports the divisions. You know, the very far left will say, oh no, no, we're going to live in a socialist type, communist type world. Everybody's got to have the same. Everybody's got to be equal. Being equal means being equal in the eyes of the law, that everybody has equal rights and equal access and equal protection from the law. That's the equality that the law brings, to bring balance among a diverse species, where, no, not everybody's born equal in our talents, in what we do. We're not all the same. We're not clones of each other. We are a diverse species. And we have a right to that diversity, because that is the rainbow. We, as a life form, reflect the rainbow. And look at the rainbow. Can you read it? Can you read a rainbow and see how all the colours gently merge at the edges? There's no thick black dividing lines, because them colours are part of one whole. But we still have a right to our diversity. And this so-called New World Order, which really there's nothing new about it, is basically about what? Imposing corporate communism. Corporate communism on our planet, on the life and the people of our planet. That is what is happening through finance, through these corporations that are an abomination and are polluting and destroying our planet, and then blaming it on humanity. Oh, well, you know, there's too many people. The planet can't sustain this many people. Well, actually, the planet can. What the planet can't sustain is a corporation that pollutes and kills the Pacific Ocean. We can't tolerate that. Humanity has been saying we don't want these nuclear poisonous power stations. Oh, but we've got to have them, haven't we? Because a few people with power and privilege decide that that is how we must live. They want their nuclear weapons. That's what nuclear reactors are. You can't make a nuclear bomb without a nuclear reactor. And even charging the public to pay for their upkeep as well. And as I say, I don't know if there is any turning back. Is there hope? Is the hope of sanity? Is the hope that the people will understand, especially the people who apparently do genuinely believe in God and Jesus? Well, you need to understand, if you're standing by a left or a right side of politics, then you totally lost the plot already. Stand up for your humanity. Stand up for human rights, and most especially stand up for your children's rights, because it's when your children get their rights, all other rights fall into place. Because one thing that children do have is the right to grow up in a pristine, natural environment, which is what the so-called, what the white people of who entered America, that is what your forebears entered into, a territory that was pristine, non-polluted, and look at it now. And that is what you're supporting, okay? Because a leader, a good leader, always, first and foremost, upholds and serves the law. Well, where is the law? Where is the law that gives America and Britain as well, because my Parliament is no different, is every bit as corrupt as America in the crimes that they've committed in the Middle East on the strength of a pack of lies. The people on the ground who don't want to believe those lies, who really think that Confederate history is what made America great. Well, no, that very history is what made America abominable. And it is abominable to this day. That to this very day, a man who had actually taken out ads, he'd paid for ads. So he was so incensed, he paid for full-page ads to get innocent people murdered by the state for crimes that they did not commit. That is a very serious point of concern. from a person who now has his finger on the nuclear button and apparently is itching to press it against North Korea. And I've heard American people saying, egging him on as well. Really, seriously, is that what you want, America? Nuclear war? As I say, all you people who think that, you know, oh, well, I'm just going to stand by the biggest, like the hangers-on who surround the bully in the schoolyard because they want some of the proceeds and they want protection. They don't want to be the ones being picked on. You're all going to be picked on. You're all going to be bullied. You're all going to suffer. Because that's what happens when you live outside the law. That's why the law exists. That's why universal law exists. To protect humanity from the kind of suffering that afflicts the whole of our planet when we empower criminals. And as I say, what is Lucifer except a criminal? And it is outrageous that America still has these statues celebrating people who... What, the most odious ruling in the High Court's history? The most odious ruling. That person has a statue. Well, is it any wonder why America now has a President Trump, who really, you know, I would not class him very much far behind President Bush, actually. And most other presidents that have gone before. They've all signed on the dotted lines. They've all ignored the law. They've all followed a criminal agenda, no matter who they are. And it was for that reason, you know, I'm not a Hillary supporter. I wasn't an Obama supporter, as my sister used to call him, a coconut. But this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a psychology, a psychological legacy, an agenda. An agenda to divide and rule. It's the basic principles of Luciferian law. So we need to forget this right-left politics. Get with your humanity. Stand up for your rights. Forget about, oh, I want all these particular groups of people out of my country because they're the ones that are robbing me of jobs. They're the ones that are robbing me of housing. No, they aren't. The people who are robbing people of housing and jobs are the people that condemned African people on the strength of the colour of their skin. That is who is robbing you of jobs and housing and hope and law. And America was not a great country under slavery. As I say, it was an abominable country. And the native people of America still reflect that. And if America has got any hope for survival now, any hope whatsoever, then you will turn to your native peoples for guidance. You will stand by universal law as upheld by Jesus. You will make compassion the head cornerstone. The stone the builders refused shall be the head cornerstone. Compassion will be the head cornerstone of your law. You will be a truly Christian country. And then America has a chance of being great and also spreading that so-called greatness throughout the world. As an example, as a shining example of what can be achieved when people lose their divisions, when people come together as human beings and be forgiven. Be forgiven. Were you wrong? Were you thinking wrong? Were you acting wrong? Were you doing that? Admit it. Be forgiven. Jesus said forgive. Christians forgive each other. What can't be forgiven is a criminal that refuses point blank to stop being a criminal. That refuses point blank to uphold the law and honour people's human rights. And Americans' human rights are not being honoured. And as a result, because the most powerful nations' human rights aren't being honoured, then what hope does that hold for the rest of the world that has been subjugated by nations like America? America's complaining, oh, there's all these Mexicans coming into America. Well, why is that? Could that have anything to do with the fact that America, the worst criminals of America, in the highest echelons of power, have been meddling in Mexican affairs and actually preventing democracy in those places, that people could have had a happy, working family life in their own country? Why are conditions so bad in so many South American countries, according to the very harsh political regimes that end up ruling in those countries, that basically have usurped the people that the democracy elected because they weren't deemed good enough by America? And then you're complaining. And we've got the same in Europe now. People complaining about, oh, there's all these Muslim refugees coming into our countries. What, when your countries are bombing their countries on the strength of a pack of lies and installing ISIS with its terrorist regime, its terrorist interpretation of Islam? Okay? So your country's doing that. You're paying them to do that. And then you're complaining that people are running away from it. Oh, and they're running into your countries. Well, maybe if you didn't upset those people so much and terrorise them, then maybe, you know, there wouldn't be millions of them flooding into Europe, would they? If America wasn't engaged in disrupting and terrorising the people of South America by their covert ops, then, you know, maybe there wouldn't be so many Mexicans flooding into America. And who's been profiting from them? Well, apparently Trump as well, because, you know, we know for a fact that he employed illegal immigrants to build a lot of his buildings, although apparently it had nothing to do with him. That was to do with his contractors. You know, being a businessman, again, he didn't have the wherewithal to think, I want my business to be supporting American people, American citizens. I want to make sure that it's real American citizens who are getting a wage and earning a decent living out of my business. No, he was quite happy just to pass it on to a contractor who gave him the cheapest price. And how do you get the cheapest price then? Obviously not by employing American workers on an American living wage. So he has got rich. A lot of these people have got very rich directly through exploiting people of poorer nations and even the poorest people of their own continent. And so, you know, that's all I've got to say. And we are in a very perilous situation right now, and it is imperative that people unite. And in doing so, we cannot forget the plight of Palestine. And I'll leave you Ken O'Keefe's videos, links under this, and I do urge you please to watch those videos and stand up for the people of Palestine.